The coffee in Ambassador Sarah Chun's cup had gone cold hours ago, but she didn't notice. Her attention was fixed on the holographic display showing the latest trade dispute between the Altarian Federation and the Kepler Mining Guild. Numbers and graphs floated in the air around her, each one representing thousands of lives that could be lost if this disagreement turned violent. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes and looked out the viewport of the diplomatic station. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions, and somewhere among them 12 different alien species were on the edge of war over mining rights to a single asteroid belt. It was her job to make sure that war never happened. This was what humans did best. For 300 years, Earth had been known throughout the galaxy as the planet of peacemakers. When other species couldn't agree, they called humans. When trade deals fell apart, humans fixed them. When ancient enemies wanted to stop fighting, humans showed them how. The door to her office opened with a soft hiss. Marcus Webb, her assistant, walked in carrying a datapad and looking worried. Marcus was young for a diplomat, only 35. But he had already helped solve conflicts on 6 different worlds. The Kepler representatives are getting angry, Marcus said, setting the datapad on Sarah's desk. They're saying the Altarians are trying to cheat them out of their fair share. Sarah nodded and picked up the datapad. She had been expecting this. The Kepler Collective were insect-like beings who thought in very black and white terms. Either something was fair or it was cheating. There was no middle ground in their minds. The Altarians, on the other hand, were energy beings who saw everything as connected. What seemed like cheating to the Keplers was just smart business to the Altarians. Schedule. Another meeting for tomorrow morning, Sarah said. And make sure we have fresh honey cakes for the Keplers. They always think more clearly when they're well fed. Marcus smiled. This was typical human thinking. Other species tried to solve problems with threats or shows of force. Humans solved them with food, patience, and finding ways to make everyone happy. Sarah had been a diplomat for 20 years. She had prevented wars, stopped genocides, and helped entire civilizations learn to work together. The Galactic Council trusted her completely. When they had problems they couldn't solve, they sent Sarah Chun, but lately something had been bothering her. Reports were coming in from the Outer Rim territories about a species called the Zephyrians. They were expanding their empire quickly, taking over smaller civilizations without bothering to negotiate first. Every time the Council tried to send diplomats to talk with them, the Zephyrians either ignored the messages or sent back threats. Sarah pulled up the latest intelligence reports on her computer. The Zephyrians were reptilian beings, tall and strong, with technology that was advanced but focused entirely on weapons and war machines. They had conquered 15 star systems in the past 2 years, and they showed no signs of slowing down. What worried Sarah most was that the Zephyrians seemed to target peaceful species first. They avoided the heavily armed worlds and went after the ones that preferred talking to fighting. It was as if they saw kindness as weakness. The intercom on her desk buzzed. "Ambassador Chun," came the voice of her secretary, "the Vegan Republic. Ambassador is here to see you." "Send him in," Sarah replied. Ambassador Kristallos entered the room, his body looking like a walking diamond that caught and reflected the light from every angle. The vegans were silicon-based life forms who thought very slowly but very carefully. When Kristallos wanted to meet urgently, it usually meant trouble. "Sarah Chun," Kristallos said, his voice sounding like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "I bring concerning news from the Council." Sarah gestured for him to sit, though she knew he preferred to stand. "What's happened?" "The Zephyrian Empire has sent demands to the outer colonies," Kristallos explained. "They want tribute payments from any system within 50 light-years of their borders. If the colonies refuse, the Zephyrians promise to take what they want by force." Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This was exactly what she had been afraid of. The outer colonies were mostly human settlements, peaceful farming worlds and research stations that had no military defenses worth mentioning. "What does the Council want to do?" she asked. "They want to send a diplomatic mission," Kristallos replied. "They want to send you." Sarah was quiet for a moment. She had handled difficult negotiations before, but the Zephyrians were different. Every report she had read suggested they had no interest in compromise. They took what they wanted and destroyed anything that got in their way. "How long do I have to prepare?" she asked. "The Zephyrian fleet is already moving toward the outer colonies," Kristallos said. "If we're going to stop this peacefully, you need to leave within the week." After Kristallos left, Sarah sat alone in her office, thinking. She called up files on her computer about Earth's history, something she rarely did anymore. Most humans preferred not to think about the old days. Before Earth had unified and chosen the path of peace, the files showed a different version of humanity. Wars that lasted for decades. Weapons that could destroy entire cities. Strategies and tactics that were studied by military academies across the galaxy. Even though humans hadn't used them in centuries, Sarah's own great-grandfather had been a general in the last war on Earth. She had his medals in a box at home, along with journals he had written about the terrible things he had seen. He had been one of the leaders who decided that humanity needed to put down their weapons forever, but as Sarah looked at the intelligence reports about the Zephyrians, she wondered if her great-grandfather and his generation had made the right choice. The galaxy was full of species who respected only strength. The humans had become known for their kindness and wisdom, but some beings saw those qualities as signs of weakness. She opened a secure communication channel to Earth. General Martinez appeared on her screen, his gray hair and serious expression making him look exactly like what he was, one of the few humans who still remembered how to fight. "Sarah," he said with a smile, "I heard you're taking on the Zephyrians. That's a tough assignment." "I'm not sure talking is going to work this time," Sarah admitted. "They don't seem interested in peaceful solutions." General Martinez was quiet for a moment. As head of Earth's Defense Force, he commanded what was supposed to be a small peacekeeping organization. Most other species thought the human military was a joke, useful only for rescue operations and disaster relief. "Do you want some advice from an old soldier?" Martinez asked. "Please." "Sometimes the best way to keep peace is to make sure everyone knows what happens if peace breaks down," he said. "The Zephyrians think humans are weak because we choose not to fight. Maybe it's time to remind the galaxy why we made that choice in the first place." Sarah nodded, understanding what he meant. Humanity hadn't abandoned warfare because they were bad at it. They had abandoned it because they were too good at it. "I'll try diplomacy first," she said. "But if that doesn't work, If that doesn't work," General Martinez replied, "Earth will remember how to protect its children." The next morning, Sarah began preparing for what might be the most important diplomatic mission in human history. She packed her formal robes, her translation devices, and all the gifts and peace offerings that had worked so well in past negotiations, but for the first time in her career, she also requested a military escort, just in case the galaxy was about to learn that human kindness came with a very sharp edge. The diplomatic ship Harmony drifted slowly toward the massive Zephyrian fleet. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood on the bridge, watching through the viewport as dozens of dark warships formed a wall of metal and weapons around them. Each Zephyrian vessel was 3 times larger than her small diplomatic ship, their hulls covered in armor plating and weapon ports. "They're not responding to our peace signals," reported Captain Torres, the ship's commander. He was a calm man who had spent his career ferrying diplomats to dangerous places, but Sarah could hear tension in his voice. "Keep trying," Sarah said. "Send the message again in their language. Tell them we come in peace to discuss the tribute demands." Sarah had brought her best team for this mission. Marcus Webb stood beside her, along with Dr. Elizabeth Kumar, a specialist in alien psychology, and Professor James Park, who spoke 17 different alien languages. They had gifts from Earth, trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs ready to offer. Everything that had worked with other species. The communications officer looked up from his station. "Ambassador, they're responding. Admiral Krex wants to meet with you personally aboard his flagship." Sarah nodded. This was good news. If the Zephyrian commander was willing to talk face-to-face, there was hope for a peaceful solution. "Prepare the shuttle," We'll take a small group, ma'am, Captain Torres said quietly. I don't like this. They could have met us halfway on neutral ground. Asking you to come to their ship feels like a trap. Sarah understood his concern, but this was how diplomacy worked. Sometimes you had to show trust to build trust. If we want them to take our peace offer seriously, we need to show we're not afraid of them. An hour later, Sarah's shuttle docked with the Zephyrian flagship. The ship was enormous inside, with corridors wide enough for vehicles to drive through. Everything was made of dark metal, and the walls were covered with what looked like battle trophies from conquered worlds. Admiral Krex was waiting for them in the main conference room. He was 7 feet tall, with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. His uniform was covered with medals and rank insignia, and a long sword hung at his side. Behind him stood a dozen Zephyrian officers, all armed and watching. The humans with cold interest. Ambassador Chun, Krex said in perfect English, his voice deep and rough. I have heard much about human diplomats. You are famous throughout the galaxy for your ability to make weak species believe they can negotiate with their superiors. Sarah kept her expression calm and friendly. She had dealt with aggressive species before. Admiral Krex, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We're here to discuss a peaceful solution to the current tensions between your empire and the outer colonies. Krex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. Peaceful solution? There's only one solution. The colonies will pay tribute to the Zephyrian Empire, or they will be conquered. Those are the only choices. Perhaps we could arrange a different kind of relationship, Sarah suggested. Earth has many resources that might interest your people. We could establish trade agreements that would benefit both our civilizations. Trade? Krex walked closer to Sarah, towering over her. Why would we trade when we can simply take what we want? Your human colonies have no armies, no weapons worth. Mentioning they grow food and conduct research? They are sheep waiting to be sheared. Dr. Kumar stepped forward. Admiral, surely your people would prefer prosperity to constant warfare. War is expensive. Peace brings wealth and stability. War brings glory, Krex replied. War proves strength. Your species has forgotten this, which is why you are weak. You sit in your comfortable councils, talking and making deals, while real civilizations expand their power through conquest. Professor Park began speaking in the Zephyrian language, offering cultural exchanges and educational programs. Krex listened for a moment, then made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. You offer us your art, your music, your philosophy, Krex said. These things are for weak species who have given up the warrior's path. The Zephyrian Empire has no use for such weakness. Sarah realized that this negotiation was going nowhere. Everything that worked with other species meant nothing to the Zephyrians. They saw diplomacy itself as a sign of weakness. But she had to try one more approach. Admiral, what if I could guarantee that the outer colonies would provide everything your empire needs? Food, rare minerals, scientific research, all freely given with no need for conquest or occupation. Krex was quiet for a moment, studying Sarah's face, then he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. You still don't understand, human. We don't want tribute because we need these things. We demand tribute because we can, because it proves our power and your weakness. He turned to his officers and said something in the Zephyrian language. They all laughed, harsh sounds that filled the room. Your species has been playing the role of galactic peacekeepers for so long that you have forgotten what real power looks like, Krex continued. You think words and treaties can stop a determined enemy. You are about to learn how wrong you are. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Admiral, are you saying you have no interest in a peaceful resolution? I'm saying that this conversation is over, Krex replied. He gestured to his guards. Escort the humans to the airlock, and make sure they understand what happens to those who waste my time. As the Zephyrian guards moved forward, Sarah realized they weren't being escorted back to their shuttle. They were being led to a different part of the ship. Admiral, we came here under diplomatic immunity. We're protected by galactic law. Galactic law is for species that are strong enough to enforce it, Krex said. You are not. The guards forced Sarah and her team into a large chamber with transparent walls. Through the windows, Sarah could see space and the diplomatic ship Harmony waiting nearby. Other humans were already in the chamber, including Captain Torres and his crew. Sarah, Marcus whispered, I think we're in an airlock. Admiral Krex appeared outside the chamber, speaking into a communications device. This message is being broadcast to all human colonies and to the Galactic Council, he announced. Let this be a lesson to any who think they can negotiate with the Zephyrian Empire, Sarah pounded on the transparent wall. Admiral, this is murder. The galaxy will not stand for this. The galaxy will learn from this, Krex replied. They will learn that the age of human diplomacy is over. He pressed a button on his control panel. The outer doors of the airlock began to open. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of her family, of all the peace she had helped bring to the galaxy. In her last moments, she wondered if humanity would remember how to be something other than diplomats and peacemakers. The message reached Earth 6 hours later. General Martinez watched the recording in the emergency command center deep beneath the Swiss mountains. Around him, military officers who hadn't worn their uniforms in years were pulling dusty files from classified archives. Sir, said Colonel Hayes, his voice shaking with rage, the Zephyrians have attacked 3 human colonies while we've been watching this. New Geneva is gone. Proxima Centauri Research Station is under assault. Volf 359 trading post has stopped. Responding to all communications, General Martinez stood up slowly. He walked to a wall safe that hadn't been opened in 50 years and placed his hand on the scanner. The locks disengaged with a series of mechanical clicks. Inside the safe were the sealed orders that every human military officer hoped would never be used. The protocols for what to do if humanity's commitment to peace was ever broken by someone else's choice of war. Colonel, Martinez said quietly, send a message to all human ships, stations, and colonies. Authentication code is Sierra 77 Alpha. Tell them the peace protocols are suspended. Sir, Hayes replied, that will activate sleeper agents we haven't used in 3 centuries. Some of our own people don't even know they exist. The Zephyrians wanted to see what happens when humans stop talking, Martinez said, breaking the seal on the orders. They're about to find out. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters in human ships and stations began sending coded signals. Merchant vessels that had carried nothing but trade goods for decades suddenly revealed concealed weapon systems. Research stations activated sensor arrays that could track enemy movements across entire star systems. Diplomatic outposts began, deploying defensive systems that other species had never suspected existed. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had been so eager to choose peace over war. Not because they were weak, but because when humans went to war, they were very good at it. Captain Lisa Harper had been flying cargo ships between human colonies for 12 years. Her vessel, the Peaceful Trader, carried farm equipment, medical supplies, and manufactured goods to the outer settlements. She was known throughout the shipping lanes as someone who always delivered on time and never caused trouble. When the coded message reached her ship, everything changed. Lisa stared at the display screen in her small cabin, reading the authentication codes 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. The message was only 5 words long, but those 5 words changed everything she thought she knew about her life. Sierra 77 Alpha, peace protocols suspended. Her hands were shaking as she entered her personal access code into a hidden panel behind her pilot's seat. The panel slid away, revealing controls and systems she had hoped she would never have to use. The Peaceful Trader wasn't just a cargo ship. It never had been. Across the cargo bay, hidden compartments opened up to reveal missile launchers, energy cannons, and enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. The ship's engines, which had always seemed ordinary, revealed their true nature as military-grade drives capable of incredible speed and maneuverability. Lisa Harper, cargo ship captain, was also Major Lisa Harper, Terran Space Command. She had been sleeping for 12 years, waiting for a war that she hoped would never come. 2 hours later, her ship dropped out of hyperspace near the Zephyrian supply convoy that had been heading toward the human colony of New Geneva. The convoy consisted of 5 massive cargo ships protected by 3 warships. They had been planning to strip the colony of everything valuable after they finished destroying it. The Zephyrians detected Lisa's ship immediately. It was just one small human cargo vessel against 8 military ships. They didn't even bother to change course. That was their first mistake. Lisa's weapon systems came online all at once. The peaceful trader fired 6 missiles in rapid succession, each one programmed with targeting information that had been updated continuously for over a decade. The lead Zephyrian warship exploded before its crew could even activate their shields. The second warship tried to return fire, but Lisa's ship was already moving. It twisted and rolled through space like a fighter jet instead of a cargo hauler, dodging energy beams while launching torpedo after torpedo. Within 10 minutes, the entire convoy was nothing but floating debris. Similar scenes were playing out all across the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been expecting easy victories against helpless human colonies. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere, the merchant ship Morning Star, which had been delivering grain to the Altarian Federation for 8 years, revealed itself to be a heavy cruiser in disguise. It intercepted a Zephyrian attack fleet heading for the research station at Alpha Centauri and destroyed 12 enemy ships before they knew what hit them. The research vessel Deep Thought, which everyone believed was studying cosmic radiation patterns, activated the most advanced sensor array in the galaxy. It began tracking every Zephyrian ship movement within 50 light-years, feeding targeting data to human forces throughout the sector. On the human diplomatic station at Rigel, Ambassador Thompson received an emergency transmission from the Altarian Federation. The elegant energy beings were panicking, their usual calm broken by what they had just witnessed. "Ambassador Thompson," the Altarian representative said, his energy patterns flickering with distress, "we have detected massive energy signatures from human vessels throughout this sector. Our sensors show weapon systems of a type we have never seen before. What is happening?" Ambassador Thompson was a kind man who had spent 15 years helping to resolve conflicts between different species. He had always believed that problems could be solved with patience and understanding. But now, for the first time in his career, he felt something cold and dangerous stirring in his chest. "The Zephyrians killed Ambassador Chun," he said quietly. "They murdered an entire diplomatic team under the protection of galactic law. They attacked defenseless colonies without warning." "But Ambassador," the Altarian replied, "we did not know humans possessed such military capabilities. Your species has always presented itself as peaceful." "We are peaceful," Thompson said. "We chose to be peaceful. But the Zephyrians have made the choice for us impossible." On Earth, General Martinez stood in the war room that had been sealed for 3 centuries. The walls were lined with screens showing the positions of every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian forces, and green dots showed human assets. What amazed Martinez was how many green dots there were. "General," reported Colonel Hayes, "we have confirmation from all sectors. The sleeper protocol is fully active. Every human vessel has revealed its true capabilities." Martinez nodded. The sleeper protocol had been humanity's greatest secret. For over 300 years, every human ship that left Earth had been built with hidden military systems. Cargo haulers carried enough weapons to fight a small war. Research vessels had sensor arrays that could track enemy movements across entire star systems. Even passenger liners had defensive systems that most military ships would envy. The galaxy had seen this as human paranoia, a species so afraid of conflict that they over-engineered their civilian ships. They had been wrong. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. "What about the colonies?" Martinez asked. "All colonial defense systems are coming online," Hayes reported. "The farming worlds are activating orbital defense platforms. The research stations are revealing weapon systems that have been disguised as communication arrays for decades. Martinez pulled up a tactical display showing the Zephyrian fleet movements. Admiral Krex had divided his forces into 3 groups, planning to conquer the human colonies one by one. It was a solid strategy against a defenseless enemy, but the human colonies weren't defenseless. They never had been. The first Zephyrian fleet arrived at the farming world of Harvest expecting to find grain silos and livestock pens. Instead, they found orbital defense platforms that had been disguised as agricultural satellites. The platforms opened fire before the Zephyrian ships were even in weapons range, using targeting systems so advanced that they could hit a moving target from 3 light minutes away. Admiral Krex watched the battle reports coming in from his command ship, and for the first time in his military career, he felt confusion. His forces were being destroyed by an enemy that shouldn't exist. According to all intelligence reports, humans had no military to speak of. They were diplomats and traders, scientists and farmers. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through," Krex ordered. General Martinez appeared on the main screen. He was wearing a uniform that looked ancient, with rank insignia that no alien species had seen before. Behind him stood officers whose faces showed a coldness that the galaxy had never associated with humans. "Admiral Krex," Martinez said, his voice calm and controlled. "I am General Martinez of the Terran Defense Force. You have attacked civilian colonies, murdered diplomatic personnel, and declared war on humanity. This communication is your only opportunity to surrender." Krex laughed, the same harsh sound that had echoed through his ship when he killed Ambassador Shun. "Surrender? General, you are outnumbered 10 to 1. Your scattered merchant ships and research stations cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire." "Admiral," Martinez replied, "you have made 2 fundamental errors in your assessment of this situation. First, you assume that our merchant ships and research stations were actually merchant ships and research stations. Second, you assume that what you could see was all we had." Krex felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "For 300 years, Admiral, humanity has been preparing for this day. Every ship we built, every station we constructed, every colony we established was designed with one purpose in mind, to ensure that if someone forced us to fight, we would win." The tactical display on Krex's bridge suddenly lit up with new contacts. Hundreds of them. Ships were appearing throughout the star system, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were warships, sleek and deadly, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Admiral," Martinez continued, "these are the ships we hoped we would never have to use. The Terran fleet has been sleeping for 3 centuries, waiting for someone to make the mistake you just made." Krex stared at the display as more and more human warships appeared. His fleet of 500 ships suddenly seemed very small. "The age of human diplomacy is over, Admiral," Martinez said. "Welcome to the age of human warfare." The battle for Kepler 442b lasted 3 days, but it changed how the entire galaxy thought about warfare. Admiral Krex had chosen the heavily defended world as his new headquarters because it seemed perfect for the Zephyrian Empire. The planet had strong natural defenses, 3 moons that could house weapon platforms, and a population of 2 billion aliens who could be used as shields against any attack. The Zephyrians had conquered Kepler 442b in just 18 hours. The planet's defense fleet was destroyed, its government surrendered, and Zephyrian forces took control of every major city. Krex felt confident that no enemy would dare attack a world where any assault would kill millions of innocent people. He was wrong about that too, Captain. Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human warship Determination, watching the tactical display as her fleet approached the Kepler system. She commanded 50 ships, each one packed with weapons and technology that had been hidden from the galaxy for centuries. "Captain," reported her tactical officer, "we're detecting over 200 Zephyrian ships in orbit around Kepler 442b. They have weapon platforms on all 3 moons and shield generators protecting their ground installations." Rodriguez nodded. The Zephyrians had turned the entire system into a fortress. Any direct attack would be suicide and would also kill the innocent aliens trapped on the planet below. Begin Phase 1, Rodriguez ordered. The human fleet spread out across the system, staying far from the planet and its defenses. Instead of attacking, they began deploying small objects that looked like space debris. Thousands of tiny metal spheres drifted through the system, each one no bigger than a baseball. The Zephyrians detected the objects but didn't worry about them. They looked harmless, just junk floating in space. Admiral Krex was focused on the human fleet, waiting for them to make their attack so he could destroy them. He didn't understand that the attack had already begun. Each sphere was actually a sophisticated mining robot, programmed with artificial intelligence and equipped with nanofabrication systems. They began to reproduce themselves, using material from asteroids and space debris. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. Within hours, there were millions of them. "Sir," reported a Zephyrian sensor operator, "we're detecting some kind of interference with our communication systems." "What kind of interference?" Krex demanded. "Unknown, sir. It's like something is learning our frequencies and then jamming them." The spheres had evolved beyond their original programming. They were studying Zephyrian technology, learning how their ships and weapons worked, and then finding ways to disrupt them. Some spheres attached themselves to enemy ships and began interfering with their systems. Others positioned themselves near weapon platforms and created electromagnetic fields that disrupted targeting computers, but the real surprise came when the spheres began working together to change the planet's weather. Dr. Sarah Kim watched from the science station aboard. The determination as atmospheric readings from Kepler 442b began to change. She had helped design the sphere technology, but even she was amazed by what they were accomplishing. "Captain," she reported, "the spheres are using the planet's atmospheric processors to create massive storm systems. They're generating hurricane force. Winds across the entire planet." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "How long until the storms ground their air support?" 6 hours, maybe 8, Dr. Kim replied. "The spheres are also releasing metallic particles into the atmosphere. It will interfere with their orbital bombardment systems." Admiral Krex watched in growing alarm as his carefully planned defenses began to fall apart. The storms on the planet below were so violent that his ground forces couldn't operate. His orbital weapons couldn't target anything through the metallic interference. Worst of all, his ships were experiencing system failures that his engineers couldn't explain or fix. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Captain Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Krex could see the calm, professional atmosphere of a human warship. It was very different from the chaos and confusion on his own bridge. "Admiral Krex," Rodriguez said politely, "we're prepared to accept the surrender of your forces. You have 1 hour to evacuate all Zephyrian personnel from Kepler 442b. "Surrender?" Krex snarled. "Captain, you have 50 ships against my 200. I control the entire planet and all 3 moons. You cannot possibly hope to defeat me." "Admiral," Rodriguez replied, "look at your sensor readings." "Tell me what?" "You see?" Krex turned to his sensor operator, who was staring at his displays with a look of horror. "Sir, the spheres ... are everywhere. They've attached themselves to every ship in our fleet. They're inside our computer systems, our weapon controls, our life support systems. In approximately 30 minutes, Rodriguez continued, those spheres will have learned enough about your technology to take complete control of your ships. You can surrender now, or you can surrender after your own vessels turn their weapons on you." Krex felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. Not fear of death, which he had faced many times, but fear of an enemy he couldn't understand or fight. "This is impossible," he said. "No species has technology this advanced." "Admiral," Rodriguez said patiently, "did you really think that a species capable of interstellar travel couldn't figure out how to wage war? The only difference between humans and other species is that we chose not to use these capabilities. You took that choice away from us." On the planet below, something even more remarkable was happening. The massive storms created by the spheres had provided cover for human ground forces to land undetected. But these weren't ordinary soldiers. Sergeant Michael Chun led a squad of 12 humans through the streets of Kepler City, the planet's capital. They moved like ghosts, invisible to Zephyrian sensors and undetected by their patrols. Each human soldier carried equipment that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The Zephyrians had taken the city's population hostage, planning to use them as human shields against any rescue attempt. They had locked all civilian aliens in the city sports stadium, surrounded by guards and weapon emplacements. "Sergeant," whispered Corporal Jackson, "thermal scans show 2,000 Zephyrian soldiers between us and the stadium. How do we get past them without starting a firefight that could kill the hostages?" Chun smiled and activated a device on his belt. "We don't go past them, Corporal, we go around them." The human soldiers seemed to flicker and disappear. They weren't invisible, exactly, but they were using personal cloaking technology that bent light around them. More than that, they were using localized space-time distortion fields that allowed them to move through solid matter within minutes. The human soldiers were inside the stadium. They moved among the terrified alien civilians, whispering reassurances in dozens of different languages. The aliens couldn't see them, but they could hear gentle voices telling them that help had arrived. The rescue operation took less than an hour. Using portable teleportation technology, the humans moved all 2,000 hostages to safety aboard their ships. The Zephyrian guards never knew what happened. One moment they were guarding a stadium full of prisoners. The next moment the stadium was empty. Admiral Krex received reports of similar rescues happening all across the planet. Somehow, the humans were extracting every civilian from every Zephyrian-controlled area without engaging in any direct combat. They were saving the very people Krex had planned to use as shields. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the spheres have gained control of our weapon systems. Our own ships are targeting us." Krex looked around his bridge at officers who had served the Zephyrian Empire faithfully for decades. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders he didn't know how to give. "Captain Rodriguez," he said into the communications channel, "what are your terms?" "Complete surrender of all Zephyrian forces in this system," Rodriguez replied. "Your ships will be escorted to neutral territory. Your ground forces will be transported to prison ships until the war is over. The civilian population of Kepler 442b will be returned to their own government. And if I refuse? Then your own ships will destroy you, and will proceed with the mission anyway." Krex was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the Zephyrian Empire, built on conquest and fear. He thought about all the worlds they had taken, all the species they had enslaved. He had always believed that superior firepower was the only thing that mattered in war. The humans had just shown him how wrong he was. They hadn't defeated him with bigger guns or more ships. They had defeated him with technology so advanced. It seemed like magic, tactics so precise they seemed impossible, and a moral code that somehow made them stronger instead of weaker. "I surrender," he said quietly. Across the galaxy, other Zephyrian commanders were making the same decision. The war that was supposed to establish Zephyrian dominance over the entire galaxy was ending before it had really begun. 6 months after the war began, Emperor Zaxxon of the Zephyrian Empire sat alone in his throne room, staring at reports that told the story of his civilization's complete defeat. The mighty empire that had conquered 15 star systems in 2 years had been dismantled in less than half a year by an enemy they had dismissed as weak. The humans hadn't just won battles. They had done something far more devastating. They had made war itself impossible for the Zephyrians to continue. Every Zephyrian supply ship that tried to carry food or fuel to their fleets simply disappeared. Not destroyed, just gone. The humans had developed technology that could make entire vessels phase out of normal space, trapping them in dimensional pockets where time moved differently. The ships still existed, but they were unreachable until the humans decided to let them return. Zephyrian computer networks across the Empire had been infiltrated by human artificial intelligence programs that were so advanced they seemed alive. These programs didn't destroy data or crash systems. Instead, they quietly changed information. Supply orders were rerouted to human forces. Military communications were redirected to human intelligence. Battle plans were rewritten to send Zephyrian ships to empty space while human forces struck undefended targets. Most humiliating of all, the humans had begun targeting Zephyrian civilians. Not to harm them, but to help them. Human medical ships appeared in Zephyrian space offering free healthcare to anyone who needed it. Human engineers fixed broken infrastructure on occupied worlds. Human teachers opened schools and taught alien children about democracy and peaceful conflict resolution. The Zephyrian people, who had been told their entire lives that conquest was the only way to achieve greatness, were seeing a different path. They were learning that strength could be used to protect rather than dominate. "Your Majesty," said General Vex, one of Zaxxon's few remaining military advisors, "we have received another communication from the Galactic Council. They are demanding our immediate surrender and complete disarmament." Emperor Zaxxon was a proud ruler who had never backed down from any challenge. His empire had been built on the principle that the strong took what they wanted from the weak. But the humans had shown him a kind of strength he didn't understand. "What do they want from us?" Zaxxon asked. "Complete withdrawal from all conquered territories," General Vex read from the document. "Reparations to all species harmed by Zephyrian aggression. Dismantling of all offensive military capabilities. And submission to a new galactic peacekeeping force under human oversight." "Human oversight?" Zaxxon laughed bitterly. "6 months ago, we thought humans were the weakest species in the galaxy. Now they want to rule us all." "Your Majesty, General," Vex said carefully, "perhaps we should consider their terms. Our fleet is scattered, our supply lines are cut, and our people are beginning to question our leadership. We cannot continue this war." Zaxxon stood up from his throne and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. Below, he could see Zephyrian citizens going about their daily lives, but something was different. They no longer looked up at his palace with pride and respect. They looked worried, defeated, and tired of war. "Set up a communication channel with Earth," Zaxxon said finally. "I want to speak with their leader." An hour later, Emperor Zaxxon found himself face to face with President Maria Santos of Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Nothing like the warriors Zaxxon had expected to lead such a powerful military force. "Emperor Zaxxon," President Santos said politely, "thank you for agreeing to this conversation. I hope we can find a way to end this conflict peacefully." "Peacefully?" Zaxxon snarled. "You have destroyed my empire, scattered my fleets, and turned my own people against me. And now you speak of peace?" "Emperor," President Santos replied calmly, "we never wanted this war. Your Admiral Krex forced our hand when he murdered our diplomats and attacked our colonies. Everything that happened afterward was your choice." Zaxxon was quiet for a moment, thinking about Admiral Krex and the decision to kill Ambassador Chun. At the time, it had seemed like a show of strength. Now he realized it had been the moment his empire began to fall. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "We want to make sure this never happens again," President Santos said. "We want a galaxy where disputes are settled through negotiation, not conquest. Where strong species protect weak ones instead of enslaving them." "And if I refuse your terms?" "President." Santos looked sad. "Then we will continue to dismantle your military capabilities until you have no choice but to accept them. We would prefer to do this peacefully, but we will do whatever is necessary to protect innocent lives." Zaxxon studied the human president's face and saw something that surprised him. She wasn't threatening him or gloating over her victory. She looked like someone who genuinely hoped he would make the right choice. "You could rule the galaxy now," he said. "Your military is clearly superior to everyone else's. Why offer negotiations when you could simply take what you want?" "Because that's not who we are," President Santos replied. "We didn't fight this war to build an empire. We fought it to preserve peace. Once that peace is secured, we want to go back to being diplomats and teachers and explorers." 2 days later, Emperor Zaxxon signed the surrender documents in a ceremony broadcast throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire officially ceased to exist. Its territories returned to the species that had been conquered. Its military forces disbanded, but the galaxy that emerged from the war was fundamentally different from the one that had entered it. Admiral Rebecca Chun, daughter of the murdered Ambassador Sarah Chun, stood on the bridge of the new flagship Terra Nova as it patrolled the space lanes between star systems. The Terran Guard, as the new peacekeeping force was called, consisted of ships from every species in the galaxy, but the humans provided the leadership and the advanced technology. "Admiral," reported her communications officer, "we're receiving a distress call from the Altarian trade convoy. They're being threatened by pirates near the Vega system." "Set course for Vega," Admiral Chun ordered. "Maximum speed." This was the new reality. Pirates, warlords, and aggressive species throughout the galaxy now knew that any threat to peaceful civilizations would bring swift response from forces they couldn't hope to match. The Terran Guard didn't conquer or occupy. They simply appeared, dealt with the threat, and left. The other species in the galaxy had learned important lessons from watching the war. The Altarians, who had always believed themselves superior to humans because of their energy-based existence, now understood that intelligence and technology came in many forms. The Kepler Collective, who had thought in purely logical terms, learned that emotion and intuition could be powerful tools in conflict resolution. Most importantly, they all learned that strength without wisdom was dangerous, but wisdom-backed by strength could protect everyone. The Galactic Council met on a space station orbiting Earth, the first time in galactic history that the Council had been based in human space. Representatives from 47 different species worked together on problems that had once seemed impossible to solve. But the most remarkable change was in how conflicts were handled. When the Rigelian Republic and the Canopus Federation began fighting over mining rights, they didn't mobilize their fleets. Instead, they called for human mediators. When the Sirius Commonwealth threatened to invade the Procyon Alliance, a single Terran Guard ship appeared in their space and the threat ended immediately. Admiral Chun often thought about her mother, who had believed that peace was possible if people just learned to understand each other. Sarah Chun had been right, but she had lived in a galaxy where not everyone wanted to understand. Now, thanks to the sacrifice she and others had made, the galaxy had learned that peace was precious because those who protected it were strong enough to ensure it. The war was over, but the lesson would never be forgotten. When Earth abandoned peace, the galaxy learned what war really meant. And having learned that lesson, they chose never to test humanity's patience again.